National Economic Council approves 5 billion naira each for palliatives to 36 states and the FCT.
52% of this money is given to states as grants.
Lagos Federal High Court strikes out firearms charges against suspended CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele as his arraignment for fresh charges is stalled in Abuja.
The Nigerian Armed Forces vows to go after terrorists as it confirms loss of personnel in Niger State.
One thing is for sure, no group will strike at own troops without injurious consequences.
And on Good Morning Nigeria, today we shall look at the tasks ahead of new cabinet members.
Indeed, the talks ahead for the new cabinet members. Weeks of speculations over now. The next thing to do is to put permutations and anxieties that characterize the waiting game behind us. And finally, the president has a cabinet in place to work with him in delivering his renewed hope agenda.
Indeed, Claire, and not without some little drama, And after the Senate took time to screen all the nominees who appeared before it, Nigerians now have an idea of those that will be driving the agenda of the government. In all, 45 ministers designates were assigned portfolio covering several ministries. And now, according to the presidency, they are expected to be inaugurated on Monday next week as members of the Federal Executive Council.
Of course, and that will be ceteris paribus, all things being equal. But let's break down the composition of the new cabinet for you. I'm sure you must have seen, of course, the names and their portfolios. But the analysis indicates that 32 ministers and 13 ministers of state, I beg your pardon, will take charge of the ministries beginning from next week. Now, while some ministries retained their names and structure, others have been renamed or created according to the vision of the government and Mr. President. Now, for instance, nobody has been assigned to the Ministry of Niger Delta, or we do not know for now what will become of that ministry. But the Ministry of Environment and Ecological Management has been reserved for the nominee from Kaduna State.
Also, Claire, the Ministry of Petroleum Resources has not been assigned to any minister. However, there are 2 ministers for the oil and gas sector, with each taking charge of oil and gas respectively. Now, already Nigerians are speculating if Mr. President will directly be in charge of the Petroleum Ministry as it was in previous governments.
So, other aspects of innovation that we see show that the President has created the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, expected to deal with Nigeria's vast opportunities within that sector. Ministry of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy has also been created, and that will harness Nigeria's vast creative opportunities. Now, it means that tourism, which used to be part of that ministry, that's the arts and culture, will now stand alone.
And 2 ministers have been designated as coordinating ministers. Now, they are Mr. Wale Odun, who has been assigned to Finance Ministry and will also coordinate the economic team of the government, and Professor Ali Pate, who is assigned to the Health Ministry, is also expected to coordinate Nigeria's health and social welfare system under the Tinubu administration. And
as you said earlier, permutations, who gets what, is now over. Analysis of the portfolios is what is happening at the moment. The Nigerians are expecting that the ministers will hit the ground running immediately. They are inaugurated next week by Mr. President. Already, expectations from Nigerians clearly indicate that the ministers will, or some of the ministers already have their tables full of challenges that they will need to tackle and meet the yearnings of Nigerians. And such critical issues will include, of course, the rollout of palliatives to, impact the effects of the removal of fuel subsidy. Stabilizing the Naira, we discussed this yesterday on Good Morning Nigeria, and of course, most importantly, addressing food security and the escalating prices of foodstuffs.
And inflation, of course. Yes. And there's no doubt that the ministers designate have their jobs cut out for them. Now, Nigerians are also looking forward to an end to these challenges like insecurity, epileptic power supply, food, bad roads, and unemployment, among others. Nigerians are also looking forward to validating whether the portfolio distribution amounts to putting round pegs in round holes. The question is, how much do they understand the tax before them? And how far can they go in actualizing this tax?
Very pertinent question, Jumaya, and you talked about inflation and rising prices of food items. Yesterday I was having a conversation with one of our colleagues here who came in from Jos, and she narrated how difficult it is to get potatoes from Mango local government area because of the conflict.
Insecurity.
And though things are getting much better with regards to items like tomatoes, like onions, and all that. I mean, you and I know, where it pinches, better than any other person. So, very pertinent questions Jume raised, and apart from the fact that the APC manifesto and the renewed hope agenda of the Tinubu administration has indicated, at the roadmap, what specific demands will the president be making from his ministers, and how will the proposed retreat, which has been regular, assist the ministers or impact, the responsibility of the tax ahead of them? There are implications, of course, and the composition and pairing of these ministers are also in question. Is it capable, that's the composition of the ministers, of generating success or administrative friction? So there are so many questions now, and if you surf the internet, you'll find plethora of questions, plethora of issues, suggestions,
opinions
and what the ministers should do, how they should do it, but everything rests on the table of Mr. President. How he goes about it, the strategies, the responsibilities he's going to assign them are all part of what we will be discussing today on Good Morning
And of course, Nigerians now know where to direct their complaints to, because now there's delegation of duties. The ministers are there to answer questions and how to provide solutions to the questions that people will be asking. I think there will be less burden on the president now.
So many,
practicalizing the issues.
Yes, and there are mixed feelings. Exactly. There are mixed opinions on the combination, the portfolios, the assigning of the portfolios to the respective ministers, whether or not the president had put square holes, square pegs in square holes. So that will be what we'll be looking at on Good Morning Nigeria today. And I love Friday. I love the feeling of Friday. It's the last edition for this week. I am Claire Adinabu Abdurrazak Jume. You don't like Fridays?
No, Fridays actually is for rest. It's a day where we pray and we do so many things. So it's a day for me to just lie down, enjoy myself. And
I was expecting that.
So I join Claire and welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria, the final edition for the week, and we are reaching you live from our Abuja studios here in the nation's capital. And we have newspaper review, business, and all that. But first, let's join Elizabeth Omori for our morning news. Hi, Elizabeth.
Do you like Friday?
Morning. Of course. Thank God it's Friday.
Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us on the news segment. The National Economic Council has come up with more resolutions to cushion the effects of fuel subsidy removal and address the effects of flood disasters facing the country.
%52 of this money is given to states as grants, while 48% of the 5 billion naira is to be paid back on an installment basis within a period of 2 years, 20 months to the CBN by the states and the local government areas in Nigeria.
A federal high court sitting in Lagos has struck out the 2-count charge bordering on illegal possession of firearms and live ammunition preferred against the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, for lack of diligent prosecution.
To my mind, it was a good decision to make, because if he had refused to strike out the charge and followed the line of thinking of the defense to insist that certain things be done by the prosecution before the charge could be withdrawn, he rightly observed that they would not prosecute the case, and at the end of the day he would end up striking it out for want of diligent prosecution and lack of evidence.
Meanwhile, the arraignment of the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, before the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory sitting in Abuja has been stalled. Emefiele, who was in court, could not, however, take his plea.
They wanted to arraign him on a 20-count charge bordering on procurement.
Now to security, the Nigerian Armed Forces has vowed to sustain onslaught on bandits and terrorists as it confirms that 36 Armed Forces personnel died in the 14th August 2023 air crash in ambush in Zungeru and Shiroro local government areas of Niger State. The Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, stated this at the Defense Headquarters, Abuja, to clear speculations on the recent attack and Nigerian Air Force mishap.
Troops, while conducting offensive operation, entered into an ambush. The ambush resulted in the death of 3 officers, 22 soldiers. One thing is for sure, no one, no group will strike at own troops without injurious consequences.
Meanwhile, the West African military chiefs met in Ghana on Thursday to coordinate a possible armed intervention to reverse the coup in Niger, as Germany calls for European Union sanctions against the coup leaders. The West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, says the meeting was being held to finalize plans for the deployment of the standby force. The talks come after a deadline for mutinous soldiers to release and reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum passed earlier this month. And talks are in top gear between the Nigerian and Indonesian government towards building a vaccine hub in Nigeria. The ambassador of Indonesia to Nigeria made this known along with other bilateral cooperations as his country commemorates its 75th National Day in Abuja.
We talk very seriously about how to establish the cooperation, especially for establish the what we call it factory for to make to produce vaccine here.
When talking of tourism, Indonesia is one of the best in the whole world. It's what we've seen here today shows they have a lot to offer in the world.
And that's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Claire and Jumai after this break. To stay with us.
Right, it's time to take a look at the business news, and we hear that the fish farmers are decrying huge loss occasioned by flood and increasing cost of feeds. From the world of business, here is Alika Wanacharwa.
Fishery, which can conveniently generate over 5 million direct jobs and 50 million indirect jobs through processors, sellers, and others in the value chain, is said to be under threat if adequate measures are not put in place. Those involved in this process are calling for more involvement of concerned authorities to tame these threats. In another development, the Nigeria Customs Service have been enjoined to optimally make use of installed scanners at Lagos seaports to ensure that its quest to decongest the ports are achieved. Speaking at a stakeholders meeting, Custom Officer in charge of terminals, Deputy Controller Issa Aliyu, said that the service has the capacity to scan about 200 to 300 containers a day. Now let's take a look at Thursday tradings on the floor of the exchange. Business News, Alika Apanachi, Arua.
Many thanks, Alika, for the business package. Up next is newspaper review.
Okay, let's welcome Chuk's the man now. Chuku Dugbaja to newspaper review. Chuku, good morning.
Yes.
How are you doing?
The man is doing well. How are you doing?
Yes, you're radiated. Is it because of Friday? I asked Jume earlier on, what how she feels when Friday comes. And the feeling is mutual.
Yes. The feeling is mutual. That means the two of you feel the same thing. I like that.
Yes. Exactly.
Instead of saying here, you say the feeling is mutual. And they'll say, his English stands out. Hello, Jumai.
Good morning, Chooks.
Morning, you're welcome.
It's good to see you. You're looking crisp this morning.
You know what they say about Fridays? The music sounds sweet on Friday.
It's okay. Let's not prolong this. Otherwise, I wanted to ask if broadcasters know Fridays.
No, we don't. Don't go there, Chooks. Let's begin with the Friday Leadership Friday.
Exactly.
And just below the masthead, we have rising food prices. FGOK is 185 billion naira for states FCT to buy grains. You find the details on page 6. Katsina government approved 7.8 billion to tackle banditry. Find the details on page 13. Trending, IPAC faults appointment of State Minister for Petroleum, and NNPCL secures 3 billion loan to stabilize Forex. We took that yesterday. And just at the bottom plate of the leadership newspaper, uneasy calm over scrapped Niger Delta Affairs Ministry. You find the details on page 7. Absence of defendant stalls and Emefiele's arraignment in Abuja. Details on page 9. Tribunal. PDP witness admits inflating poll results in Nasarawa. Details on page 16. Oil theft triggered $10.7 million daily loss from 2009 to 2020. That's coming from NETI. And from the defense headquarters, Niger, we are battle ready. ECOWAS defense chiefs declare. Let's quickly go to the New Telegraph. The bold headlines, in the Leadership Friday this morning. Smuggling operational cost threaten rice production in North. You find the details on page 4. You see all the illustrations there. Let's quickly go to the New Telegraph, and above the masthead, Nigeria's Eurobonds rise on ministerial appointments. $3 billion loan. You find the details on page 3. And below the masthead, DHQ, 3 officers, 22 soldiers killed in Niger. Says troops recovered 672 weapons, ammunition in 1 week. Find details on page 4 and 5. Imogabo, INEC to request for 2,300 soldiers with riders. Abbas reshuffles committees after Sununu's ministerial appointment. You find the details on page 2 and 4. On ending security challenges in Nigeria, disheartening. That's coming from the Labour presidential candidate Peter Obi. Disciplinary committee clears Toby Amoson for World Athletics Championship. And we have a story just under that. FG appoints new CMDs for 11 federal medical centers. You find details on page 4 and 3. And just by the side piece of the picture story, you see there, defense chiefs, ECOWAS ready to deploy standby forces to Niger. That's the $1 million question. Plane with 271 passengers makes emergency landing as pilot collapses, dies. And the story under there, Customs seizes 1.2 billion donkey genitals at Lagos Airport. Japa, Kwara governor approves automatic replacement of doctors and orders. You find the details on page 28. And at the bottom plate of the New Telegraph, Emefiele court allows withdrawal of firearms charges. With riders, judges say DSS not law-abiding. Absence of other defendants stalls arraignment on fresh 20-count charge. Court reschedules to August 23rd, and lawyers condemn fresh charges. Go on. How Clark helped Nigeria achieve reconciliation after civil war. Says his regime got a lot of conscience pricking from Soyinka, JP Clark, and others. El-Rufai lied on third-term agenda. That's coming from Professor Osumbo. You find details on page 2 and 26. And the pictures, the headlines in the New Telegraph states FCT to get 5 billion each as FG releases 180 billion naira grant loans. I think we have it in all the papers. Claire?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Jimmy. We have it in, it's a front liner on all the papers, the Nation and the Punch. But of course, they all come with different captions and different points of view. But let's begin with the Punch. Labour folds 180 billion naira palliatives, says government will frustrate program. And the riders there states to get 180 trucks of rice. NLC, TUC worry politicians will hold materials, and NEC committee to meet Labour over subsidy relief. Tinubu appeals to Nigerians. Again, if you look at the front page of the Punch, the picture story of the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. DSS drops firearms charges. 6.9 billion naira fraud case adjourned. And that's the headline story on the front page of the Punch. There are other stories trending at the foot of the paper. Military mourns 25 soldiers killed in Niger, hunts bandits. And just add that there are different figures here on the different paper. I think the one Jume read is carrying 22 soldiers. This one is saying 25. But the story from the DHQ is also given a different number. We will get to that, presently. Now, NSCDC nabs scavengers with vandalized railway trucks. It's on, and the APC Kano government clash over attempt to bribe judges. And just above the nameplate, banditry, North Central. Northwest plunge into 902 billion naira debt. Poor revenue persists, and federal government begins ministers' designate documentation on Saturday. Now that's the front, the lead story, the front page story of the Punch. The Nation also has a lead story on the palliatives. It says a watch with 180 billion naira subsidy pain relief cash, and a number of riders there. Federal government's 5 billion naira per state fund for immediate use to cushion high food and fertilizer prices. NEC okays transfer of World Bank's $800 million to the poor and talks with Labour to go on. Now there are highlights of the palliative plan here. States got 2 billion naira of previous 5 billion. States that border Niger Republic to get federal support. States to buy 100,000 bags of rice, 40,000 bags of maize, and 5 trucks of rice received earlier. Review of social register ongoing. These are the highlights. And that story on the incident in Niger State. DHQ, 3 officers, 33 soldiers died in Niger ambush. NAF jet crash. Expert AK-47 can't shoot down jet. Again, AK-47 can't shoot down jet. And Emefiele charged with fraud, abuse of office, others in Abuja. Arms possession suit struck out in Lagos. But here is my story. Just above the nameplate. Toby Amusan cleared for World Championship. That gladdens our hearts. Toby Amusan cleared for World Championship. And
I'm sure she's going to set records again. She might break her record and set new records. She's determined.
Hopefully. And Niger, ECOWAS activates standby force, defense chiefs meet in Ghana. ECOWAS activates standby force, defense chiefs in Ghana. All right, I think these are the stories. Yes, and Chooks demand.
Yes, Claire, first of all, we want to say that may God receive the souls of our soldiers who died in that crash. When a man says, I'm ready to die for country at any point in time, that immediately makes him a noble man. And people will tell you, are they not paid? You're talking nonsense. A man who says, I'm ready to die for my country at any time is a noble man.
Yeah.
May these soldiers so rest in peace. But I don't like the seeming inaccuracy in the figures being bandied about. 22, 25, 33.
27.
What's that?
Well, we just confirmed from the DHQ headquarters that it's 36. Actually.
36. Yes. Okay, so the nation report is accurate. But let me quickly say that when these terrorists, bandits, whatever they call themselves, bandy about the photo opportunity over morbid things, and we begin to spread all over, we are not helping matters at all. When terrorists show what they say they were responsible for, which I'm happy, a former chief of training and operations at the NAF headquarters, Air Vice Marshal Gbolahan Adekunle, has debunked the claim that they downed the helicopter or jet, saying that an AK-47 cannot shoot down a military helicopter. Because these people thrive on, media space, media attention and all that. People should stop giving it to them. And they're solemnly mourn the death of soldiers who are actually putting their lives on the line.
I received that video, I think more than 50 times.
Who are those spreading it? You don't spread, you don't play
People
into
just
the
keep
hands
sending it and
of
sending
terrorists.
it.
That doesn't help us in terms of considering your relationship with them, what we call them.
We're aiding their propaganda right now.
That's what it is, and that's what they want.
I was a bit worried when I heard this story. One, because when a helicopter is flying, usually it flies at a very high altitude above, sea level. Yes. So my worry is it possible for AK-47, the range, to get at the helicopter? Is it possible?
Maybe they had the rocket launcher.
They said with the use of AK-47.
No, but AVM Gbolahan is saying that AK-47 cannot shoot down a military helicopter.
Exactly.
And that must be authority from a man who should know.
Yes.
Okay? Some people could argue, well, if you get the fuel tank, it starts leaking fuel, it will crash some way. But you hardly take it down there. That's the point they're making.
When I talk to us about being state-centric in our opinions and in whatever we do, people think that we are overzealous. Yes. But you see, you must be state-centric. You must be patriotic. You must think of your country first. So when
you get to quarrel with a lot of them because they think, because you're working in NTA, you want to talk about, you want to support the government, you want to do that. But
that's uncharitable.
For crying out loud, we need to.
If it's not good for country, it will not be good for you
at all.
By implication,
yes.
Let people know that.
Chooks, in international relations, all the international system is driven by state interest.
Patriotism.
Yes.
Patriotism. The state interest takes precedence and is the driver of every policy and every information, that you dish out. Yes. So I don't see the reason why, yes, things may not be as rosy or as we plan. But then again, nothing is perfect. No country is perfect.
No country is
every country, has its own challenges. You go to. I was in the Netherlands and I dreamt of coming back. Yes, things were in order.
Were things not rosy there?
Exactly.
You even said that cyclists have a space to.
Chooks, you don't want to.
They have a space to use their
bicycles.
Their bicycles and all that, and no taxi will threaten them.
Yes, everything seems to be
Ojo Maduekwe must be jealous in his grave.
But
he tried it.
But then there was
in Nigeria on the highway. They would just brush you off into the ditch.
But there was this paradox about the whole thing that didn't get to me. It didn't get to me. So I looked forward to returning to my country, and the first thing I did when I got back home was to pounce on a bowl of pounded yam, well prepared egusi and all those things.
There's no place like Nigeria in this world.
Sometimes
I love this country.
Whether our problem is that everything seems to be at our beck and call.
Yes.
In this country, you throw away a mango seed, and after about 2 months, you see one thing shooting out of the soil there. Yes. You don't have to put it in the soil for it to. So maybe necessity has not been the mother of our invention, because we have everything yafu.
There are two stories we could quickly look. Well, the palliatives is all over. We'll just wait for how that will be implemented and see. But the labor union, and other society watchers have also raised concerns about hoarding, politicians and how it will be
Clear
distributed.
distribution is key.
Key.
How are they going to handle it? We have always mentioned the need for even the social investment part of it to go beyond the expectation of minimum wage and all that. If, for instance, when this thing started, about 6 buses applied between Kershi and Nyanya, or from Lugbe to, you're going to see some lightening of the burden. You understand? So I like what is happening now. People could say, why was it not planned ahead of time and all that? It's never late to mend.
It's never too
That's
late.
what I'm going to call that.
We're being asked to round off, but on a final note, I'm glad. I just must talk about it. It's Tobi Amusan, cleared for World Championship. When she was handed the suspension, she cried out and said she's the most investigated, athlete.
Yeah.
In the course of in 1 week,
yes.
she could be tested for as many as 3, 4, 5 times, and she came out to say, look, she knows that she's in the clean and that she will come out, victorious.
Football was not popular in your time for ladies, and so was it track and field for you?
It was track and field.
It was track and field, yes.
No, but it was track and field for me.
She was on the team.
It was track and
field.
You were?
Yeah,
it was track and field for me, and by implication, football as well, because ladies are doing. Our ladies are doing.
You have this tomboy kind of. It's now that motherhood.
For me, it was handball.
It's changing.
What are your plans for
basketball?
What are your plans for?
Okay,
to make my wife as happy as I can make her. That's it.
All right, and of course, I know you won't get up earlier on Saturday.
Thank you.
Do have a pleasant weekend.
You too.
Yes. All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away. We'll be right back with our conversation.
You're welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And to give us a background to our discussion on the tax ahead of the new cabinet members, here's a report by Abdusalam Jubril.
It is said that the performance of any government is directly proportional to the quality of its officials, elected or appointed. Heads of government often look out for the right men and women to manage various sectors of the economy as ministers. They are responsible for driving government policies and ensuring that the expectations of the citizens are met. On 7th August 2023, the Nigerian Senate confirmed 45 ministerial nominees submitted by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu after a week-long screening of 48 of them. 9 days later, the much-awaited portfolios were assigned to the confirmed ministers. Nigerians have been reacting to the assigned portfolios in President Tinubu's cabinet. About 10 ministries were created or modified. One of such newly created ministry is Marine and Blue Economy, to be headed by Bunmi Tunji Ojo. This involves the economic activities associated with the oceans and seas. Another newly created ministry is Gas Resources, separated from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Arts, Culture, and the Creative Economy, to be headed by Hanatu Musawa, combines 3 aspects. Recall that in the previous administration, the culture sector was merged with information. President Tinubu also created social welfare and merged it with health to have an encompassing ministry. Aerospace development was created and merged with aviation, while youth development now stands on its own. Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation was created from the Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development during the previous administration. While some Nigerians applaud the list of ministers and their portfolios, stressing that many of them are round pegs in round holes, others feel the portfolios could have been done in other ways. What is to be expected of the new ministers in the immediate, short and long term? Many sectors of the economy are in dire need of a boost and revamping. Will they be capable of meeting the expectations of Nigerians? These and more will form the crux of discussions as guests speak to the tax before the incoming ministers shortly.
Abdul Salam Jibril, thank you for that question. Great question. Will the new cabinet members meet the expectations of Nigerians? Now, that's the crux of our conversation on Good Morning Nigeria this morning. And if you've just joined in, we welcome you as we begin our introductions of our guests here in the studio. Dr. Abel Daniel Uchibu is former Deputy Clerk, House of Representatives, and CEO Creative Management Consult here in Abuja, and we'd like to say thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you.
Also here in the studio is a familiar face, Media's Delight, Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy at Adamawa State, and also a public affairs analyst. Honorable Sajo.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
I can't wait for the vibrant conversation, discussion we're going to have. And also joining us from our Enugu studio is Professor Joy Ngozi Ezealo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Emeritus Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Nsukka. Thank you so much for joining us, Ma.
All right, Professor Joy Ezealo seems to be a bit distracted there. When we will, of course, bring her into the conversation as soon as. But let's come back to the studio. And the first question, of course, will be, and I'm just going to direct this to Honorable Sajo, who's a former Commissioner for Information and Strategy in Adamawa State and Public Affairs Analyst. Finally, the ministers have been assigned their portfolios. After 2 months or thereabouts, would you think it's hope at last?
What?
Would you think it's hope at last? Hope at
last. I think it's hope. Hope, definitely. I had cause to discuss issues about the cabinet, and some people were talking about the size of the cabinet, and I was talking about the likely efficiency of the cabinet. When you reduce responsibilities to manageable sizes and you hand it over to people, it will be easier for you to begin to monitor. In the past, we used to have a behemoth Ministry of Transportation, for example, that covers aviation, marine transportation, road transportation, and it was almost like difficult even for one person to begin to pay attention to all those key areas. Now we have 3 people who are going to look at them, more closely. The guy, the minister in charge of marine and blue economy will pay attention mostly to what happens to water transportation, and I hope that includes inland waterways and all of that. The person in charge of aviation will have to face aviation, so the person that is responsible for land transportation will definitely be assessed on the basis of what we do on the roads and what happens with the rail. So we now have a more manageable setup. And it's the same thing with other areas. And I also...
How do you mean more manageable? If you compare the size of what we have now, to what we had in the previous administration.
No. More manageable in the sense that, if you notice, there was a point in time when in the Ministry of Transport, there was so much crisis in MPA and NIMASA that took away all the attention. And you know, we had serious crisis in other aspects, but they were not looked after. The same thing happens when aviation was under transport. You know, when it was transport and aviation, crisis will happen in the aviation sector that will divert all attention to it. But now everybody will look at what the last administration. The first tenure of Muhammadu Buhari, we had Fashola handling works, the housing and power. All of them, 3 key sectors of the economy. And at the end of the day, he did his best, but he could not deliver effectively on all the 3 because it was too heavy. Now we can have but most importantly, we are hoping and we're praying that government will also have, beyond the oversight of the National Assembly, government should have a monitoring and evaluation unit that will begin to assess these ministers using certain parameters, using templates that determines deliverables, that determines outcomes, so we can, when we say a minister is functioning, we should be able to have the parameter upon which he was assessed to say he was functioning. We also need, very importantly, that the ministers should be charged with the responsibility of bridging the trust deficit that exists between government and the people. It's very, very key. The pool, the reservoir from where government, elected in particular, pulls its legitimacy is the people. You do not move a system, believing that you alone knows what needs to be done. You need the people. And so in gaining back the trust of the people, in dismantling the trust deficit that exists, the ministers must be up and doing, and they must be connected. They are not ministers of Abuja. They are not supposed to be in Abuja, enjoying the serene environment in Abuja, but they should be ministers that are in touch with the situations, with the situation of their delivery points at locations across the country. That should really buoy up the hope that we have in the new cabinet.
That's beautiful. And now let's bring in Dr. Abel Daniel Ochibo. You've been part of the system, and we've seen the rigorous screening that took place, of the ministers. And Ahmed Sajo is saying that government should have a monitoring, unit and evaluation to check them. But it's a mixed grade of ministers we're seeing here: politicians, experts, technocrats, and they're all coming on board to support the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Would you say that the portfolio assignment meets your expectation?
Well, thank you so much. I'll answer that, but let me paint a bit of preamble from the question that was asked earlier. The hope at last. Yes, the expectation of Nigerians is very palpable. You can virtually catch it in the air. But let me say that this is a privilege to, put on the front burner the same leadership question that has dogged us for a long time. And this is another privilege for Nigeria to showcase itself. Now, I was looking at attending the newspapers yesterday, and I saw the new Minister of Sports, Minister Designate. Yes. And every report I read said is the 36th Minister of Sports. Now, let's use that by way of extrapolation, perhaps. Every other minister is within the bracket and the band of maybe 30, 40, 50. Now, when you have an average ministry, having leaders as ministers, maybe since independence, about 30 to 50 of them. Now, that's a long time that we needed to see evidence of performance. But that is the background we have. So I think a lot is expected. But come to think of it, Nigeria is littered, and I dare say with a litany of what I call carcasses, cadavers, of ideas, of narratives, of initiatives, of projects, of institutions. And when I say cadavers, I mean they have failed over time. But we can't go on like this. So hope at last, yes, there's hope that the ministers have come, and thank God that it's a bit early this time. But then, I want to say that when you say at last, we'll wait. At the end of their journey, we'll know whether that hope has been rekindled or not. Now, very quickly, you talked about the portfolios. Let me say this. In the National Assembly, there was a time that there was so much about come with the list of ministers and their portfolios. And we spent a lot of time on that, and government never did it. The only difference this time is that the portfolios have been assigned just before the inauguration. So I think that's an improvement, and that's very heartwarming. But then, as to whether the portfolios are suitable or not, let me say that it's a very difficult judgment. Yes, as much as possible, you expect that you are given a portfolio that you should have requisite experience. We should look at you and feel that you are a round peg in a round hole. But I tell you, with the level a person attains to become a minister, and sometimes you don't put the person in a box. So I'll prefer to say that the chief executive, the president of the nation, there are so many things available to him that will not know. The mere fact that you have been in an industry or in a sector all the while, it's not compulsory that you must keep serving there. Because once you've attained, a beacon in life, for instance, if you've gone to the university, you have at least a first degree or equivalent of a first degree. Now, we believe that you have attained the level of what we call critical thinking. And all things being equal, you should be able to perform in any ministry you are sent to. Now, look at the new ministries. There are close to 12 or 13 of them that in part or in whole have been remodeled somehow. You see something about innovation and science technology, arts, culture and creative economy. You see something about innovation, creativity, and all that. Now, that tells you that it's not so much about what you've been doing. I give you an instance. Senator John Eno has been in the House of Representatives, has been in the Senate. He's been chairman, appropriation. He's been chairman, deputy chairman, finance, and so on. Now he's coming into the sports ministry. And I'm told he's a very good lover of sports. Now, it means that you have a leadership acumen and etiquette that you can deploy and go and use in that ministry. And let me tell you, from experience, even in the university, I did an MBA, and I saw many of my classmates who did not have a first degree in management or business. And I tell you, they were on top in class because they came in with a new level of enthusiasm and zeal that put them ahead. So sometimes we don't put people in a box.
It's beautiful. So it didn't matter, again, whether you have the requisite experience within that box.
Yes.
But you have the administrative skill and capacity
to
deliver. Thank you, Dr. Chibu. Thank you for your opening remarks. Let's go to our Enugu studio now, where Leonard Sik, Professor Ngozi Joy Ngozi Ezilo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, is joining us. Professor Ezilo, you were a bit distracted when we first came to you. Good morning and thank you. Let's quickly have your own opinion about the portfolio assignments. I'm sure you must have listened to the two guests we have here in the studio. Honorable Ahmed here things in terms of efficiency, this is good. And Dr. Chigbo is saying, okay, there is hope. And he's also talked about competence versus experience. What's your perspective?
I think the taste of the pudding is in the eating. But really, back to serious business, is 80 days since the coming into power of this government, and basically 20 days to 100 days in office. That is always remarkable because people tend to showcase what they have achieved. And the ministers are coming just these 20 days. Definitely from their part, there may not be any deliverable before the 100 days. But let's get back to the issue of assigned portfolios. There are those that you can call square peg and square hole, that there are mismatch, definitely. But I've listened to other guests, and I know that we have to think in the best interest of Nigeria, or what Nigerians, majority of Nigerians want. What Nigerians want at this stage is an efficient, transparent, and accountable government. And that is what we desperately need. And then, so the ministers are coming in with huge expectation, and with the prevailing circumstances and environment that have made Nigerians not only poorer, but they are angrier. The Japa syndrome is there. People cannot cope with their wages in terms of having a living wage. We know the situation. So people don't want to see ministers who will start, exhibiting ostentatious livelihood or disconnected from them. They must be responsive and show seriousness in tackling the problem. And one of the ways to go about it is that there must be target that Mr. President will have given to every ministry, including the new ministry. Clear targets with indicators and milestones, in order to measure how far and the successes they are recording. It is very, very important, because this aspect we don't take seriously. Because if the chief executive does not give a clear target, this is your ministry, I want you to achieve so and so within this period, and then they are taking through that. I believe they will be having retreat very soon, and they will all have their template. It is very important. But there are also ministers there that you don't really need to teach. There will be few, in fact, not more, just more than few, that will be learning on the job. And that's where you have a problem, where there is huge expectation, where already the environment is one that people can't afford to wait a minute longer. And then you have people who have to take their time, learn the ropes, because they have been placed in a ministry, they don't have capacity. There are people you don't have to think about that. Look at Works, for example. Governor Mahi that is there is an engineer by profession. He has showcased that he can. So when it comes to Works, he already have to know what he wants. What they need to do is to take stock. Each ministry will have to take stock, do mapping, and then have their own strategic plan and have shared vision with also administrators, because the civil servants who are there have to buy in, the public servant, into your own into the agenda and the overall agenda of the chief executive and the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So it is important. That target is very important. The deliverables are very important. And I think they should be very clear and quick also to change any minister that is not performing. Because underperformance has been the bane of Nigeria and the government, and inefficiency, and we've seen the worst of it in the last 8 years, where people were not performing and you kept them on the same position and you renewed their mandate. So renewing their mandate is saying, well done for not performing. I believe that the type of person we have as president today is not one who will have any complex about anybody outshining him or anybody not doing. So he will want to see people succeed. And I believe that those ministers are the hands and legs, and then they are the eyes also of the president. And they are the ones who will do the work that will be shown. People are hungry. There is hunger in the land. So that means the poverty, ministry will be very important. The people, bad roads are bad. Kidnapping is at what? People also, because also, you see that the kidnappers target bad portions of the road. We need also effective and efficient means of transportation. Today, air travel is oversubscribed. And then we're adding aerospace into that. I don't know what that means, but of course I know what aerospace mean in terms of engineering. But aviation and what the problem are. What we've seen in Nigeria aviation sector in the past is that, of course, they keep finding new ways of taking money, whether by tolls. Fan is very rich, and corruptly everything will evaporate. You come to the airport, nothing is working, the escalator is not working. We have not built for our population. We have millions of citizens that travel, and then you have one cranky elevator that is not working. You have escalator that most of the time is out of, you have a security point that most of the time is out of service. We just need to change the way we do business. And unfortunately, we have majority of the people also as politicians, and a few technocrats, but I believe that the politicians will study the mood of the nation, mood of Nigerians, and then look at their faces and just see that people are in a hurry to see a new lease of life, to feel, to breathe, fresh air. So, and to breathe, and we have to allow Nigerians to breathe. You can see also new ministries created, whether marine and blue economy. Those have to be defined. Science and technology already in it is innovation. But when we have innovation, entrepreneurship, and there are ones that are called coordinating ministries, there are cross-cutting issues where these ministries obviously overlaps that we see in MDAs. So I believe that they are going to work together and know that they are working not just for the same purpose, for the best interest of Nigeria, and that they are also working also for a president that want them to achieve. So the outputs will have to be defined, and everybody will key into that, and then they will deliver in their different sectors. Nigerians, they definitely, people are hungrier today. The value of Naira is defended. The price of fuel, gas, all of those is good that they've separated gas and petroleum resources. And I hope with that there will be new focus on gas, which is where to go. And then the petroleum resources, we do the needful. Because Nigerians have asked government after government, what does it take to get our refineries to work? Or even to build brand new refineries, if the ones that they have been repairing and renovating has not worked. It's not a rocket science. How come that people are refining fuels in their backyard and they are being impounded and showcased every day, and then a whole government have business with importation of crude oil, which didn't start with this government. Of course, the government is trying to take up bold steps, to solving it. But I think the first things would have been done before putting not the cart before the horse. But again, because the part of the scramble for the dollars that are limited, foreign exchange, and the depletion of the foreign exchange is this issue of importation. And we have no business with importing fuel. That is the truth. And if you go around those refineries in the neighborhood of Nigeria, Malabo, all of them, they are also all owned by Nigerians. So why can't we open up the economy? Economy, the hunger, the insecurity, and human insecurity. It is what we are suffering from. Security is a big issue. So we need to know those in defense, and defense spending in a way that is transparent and it makes sense. It's not the procurement is very key. Everybody have to learn the rudiment of procurement. Not a situation where different ministers will get their hands directly into procurement and then compromise also the final things that are brought into the country. We've seen in the past, not in this government, in the past where people imported CCTV for securing Abuja, and none of them worked.
Professor Joy, yes, you've raised a lot of issues, in your opening comment there, and we will get to issues that you really want to talk about, but we need to come back to the studio so that we can bring in the other guests into the conversation. Now let's bring in Dr. Abel. Dr. Abel, she has raised a lot of issues, especially with the new ministries. It sounds strange to Nigerians, and a lot of Nigerians are saying, are we moving ahead, or are we just trying to pump money into other places that is not relevant to the Nigerian structure itself? So how do you think about this new introduction of new ministries that are out there, and how do you think they will function well to impact Nigerians?
Thank you. Yes, For sure, the professor went and touched quite a number of issues. And the issues about Nigeria's development are so humongous that you need a hybrid of measures to deal with them. Now, let me say this, that for a long time, there has been an unrestrained, gradual but progressive descent and relapse into a tailspin in this country. And that's why I said earlier that the hunger and the hope for development, the expectation by Nigerians is quite palpable. And it goes around, there's no area of the economy, there is no sector of the economy today that is not in a dire strait, that is not in a hurry to develop, that people are not waiting to see, creativity and development. So what we have seen so far, and like we've said, there are close to 12 or 13 new ministries, either in part or in whole. And I think all these are in an effort to see that we, craft a model of development that will be a departure from the past. We are going to see a new system, and that is our hope. That, look, things have not been, what can we do? And so one of the things we've seen is that, one, there are new ministries. Secondly, we have seen that some ministries have either been restructured or remodeled, like I said, in part or in whole. Number three, if you watch, we have brought back this concept of a coordinating minister of the economy. We have, I think, from the list I saw, we have 2 ministers that are coordinating. Health and social welfare, finance and the economy. Now, that is yet another level of innovation. So, when you put all this together, and then like we said earlier on, we now have a system whereby we didn't waste time as much as maybe we used to have sometimes in the past. And ministers have come on board within 3 months.
Because there's a law.
Yeah. So the law is now working. So these are all, glitters of hope here and there that I believe that we can cash in on them, and then we can see that they will hit the ground running. Perhaps as we go on, the government would think of some other, activities and some other strategies, and they will have to calibrate and reconfigure what they will do so that, like my co-speakers have said, we can see development, we can see activity, we can see results, we can see outcomes. I give you an example. We had a president in this nation. When ministers came, as you were doing your documentation, I was told that you had to sign an undated letter of resignation. I'm sure maybe you forgot. There was something like that. Yes. Now, that was a model. There was a strategy. Perhaps it put ministers on their toes. You have come for service. It's not politics. It's about results. So I believe the government can come with a mix of strategies that will suit it to put every minister on his or her toes, that the time for play is gone. It's gone. Nigerians are hungry for results.
It's no longer business as usual. I'm sure that's a cliche now. Honorable Sajo, earlier on you talked about efficiency. Just before we delve into maybe critical sectors that would, require, prompt attention and critical attention. Someone said that the ministers will just not have to walk. They will have to not hit the ground running, but they have to sprint. That indicates the urgency, that Nigerians want things get done. Now, if you recall, the Oresanya report, 800 pages, that report was in a bid to, cut down the cost of governance, streamline the cost of governance, and, impact on efficiency. Now we are having 13 new ministries and a wider cabinet. You talked on efficiency. How might this impact on the cost of governance, which Nigerians have been, hitting hard on, to be streamlined, and of course the deliverables expected from the ministers?
Well, I think the cost of governance will definitely go higher because you have higher departments with ministers. But I think with the efficiency of the governance system will bring down costs further, in the sense that it will increase performance, and with performance will come additional income and progress for the country. The important thing is that, you know, like the learned professor said, you know, if you have deliverables, you have milestones, you have a template for measuring outcomes and performances, and you insist on that. A lot of people don't understand that government is an enabler. And in the last few years in Nigeria, we must accept that areas where there is very little government attention are the areas that we've been succeeding. The entertainment industry, the creative industry, those are the areas that we are performing wonderfully and making waves across the globe. So that tells you that, look, government as an enabler has not performed as required in the past. Now, government had realized that, look, there are areas that we could have done better if we had put in a little bit more effort. Let me give you an example. We had youth and sports had always been our system, Ministry of Youth and Sports. As if the only thing you expect young people to do is to participate in sports. Now we are separating youth and sports and telling, now what we need to do is a youth development agenda that prepares our young people to be better leaders in this tomorrow.
Innovation and all that.
So now to make it possible, we have a ministry. She said about cross-cutting. There are definitely they cannot work in silos. They have to work, together, cooperatively. We have a ministry in charge of youth. So then that ministry will leverage on the activities of the Ministry of Sports, for example, to encourage young people to excel in sports. That same ministry will leverage on the activities of the ministry in charge of creative industry to encourage young people to be creative. That same ministry will leverage on the activities of the innovation component of one other ministry to encourage young people. One area we have succeeded beyond our imagination, maybe negative, maybe considered negative, but is still, an achievement on our part, is what we call Yahoo Yahoo. That our young people could manipulate the computers to the point of,
moving funds.
If only we could harness that creative ability into positive enterprise. That is an area that is the new world, the new vista. So we are looking at a situation where our ministries will be targeted at achieving specific results. When we say, for example, that we now have some ministers that you could easily pin them on past performance. Take, for example, the Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Mamman. He started from being a university lecturer, rose to become a professor. He became the DG of the Nigerian Law School. He is currently the Vice Chancellor of the university. So when we have an ASU strike under him, he does not manage it well. No, but I'm coming. If he does not manage it well,
yes,
we will have cause to say, look, my friend, this is your tough. You must understand how it works. Unlike some ministers that will tell you, this is my first time of coming into this business. Now, we also have a situation where we have ministers that, will come in from a background of what they are assigned to do. Some of them, have been on ICT, and they have been given ministries that are responsible for ICT and communications. We hope that they'll be able to deliver. But none of the ministers, whether equipped or not equipped, whether prepared or not prepared, whether professional in a field or not professional in a field, no minister will function effectively unless the person who assigns him that ministry ensures that he is supervised effectively. Nigerians did not give any minister their mandate. They gave the mandate to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He is delegating that mandate Nigerians gave him to the ministers. Okay. It is his responsibility to say, look, my friend, this is how I want. We already have what we call renewed hope. Whichever direction you come from, whether you are from PDP or whether you are from Accord Party, because there are people from Accord Party I know, there are people from PDP that I know that are in this. Whatever party you come from, your goalpost is the renewed hope that the APC fashioned out as the manifesto upon which President Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaigned for Nigerians to vote for him. We must deliver on that renewed hope.
Okay. Ahmed Sajo, as usual, when you speak on issues like this, people tend to learn a lot. You sound like a lecturer, actually. I've gotten a lot of information. And let's bring in Professor Joy, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, back into the conversation. You raised some issues while you were talking, about ministries, unbundling of the ministries, new ministries coming up. And one issue I want you to talk about is the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, which the president is the minister for the past, I think, since Obasanjo's era. President Obasanjo is the minister of petroleum, and then we now have a state minister of petroleum. We have two states, and then it has been unbundled with natural gas too. This is the goose that lays the golden egg here in Nigeria, revenue generation and all that. And a lot of people are concerned that this time around, something must be done in the petroleum sector to arrest all the challenges that have been, coming up, in the Niger Delta and every other place in Nigeria. How do we bring these ministries on board to ensure that the golden goose lays the golden egg and Nigerians enjoy eating that egg?
Very much. Like I said, yes, it's good that it's been separated, but still we are waiting. Who is the real, the minister of petroleum or both? Or we've dispensed with really the minister, because people are worried if given the huge responsibilities of the president, he will want to oversee that ministry. Again, in the last 8 years, we didn't see effective oversight of that ministry, but I believe there is a radical, not only departure, but in terms of personality and in terms of also capacity, that the president might be able to supervise it effectively. So what they need to do, because that has been the most opaque ministry, and with the new legislative development, there are things, NNPC also unbundled. There is still a lot of interference. NNPC not accountable institution, not remitting fund. That's what we need to see, efficient management of petroleum resources. Up till now, we are just being told, and for the first time under this government, that they now have an idea of how much people we consume in terms of fuel or diesel on daily basis. Because in the past, people said the number couldn't have been right. But because of this subsidy, it was a scam, and people were benefiting, and fictitious figures were being given. And these petroleum resources that's supposed to have very clear, marker statistical information, they don't have. So they all thrive is that is the most lucrative ministry anybody will want to serve. Because you can be there sitting down, the dollars are rolling and the money. No, not this time around. People, Nigerians are upset, they are frustrated, and they want to see development. So first, let us really know what I've never seen a tour or any of these ministers go to see those refineries, find out firsthand what is happening, and then find out how we can solve it, so that immediately, and I mean within this year, this importation of fuel stops. And we have to also develop other products from this. The issue of gas flaring, we hope that with the Minister of State for Gas, they can deal with that. They can also, there are gas pipelines being developed. I hope Nigeria war wouldn't affect that is happening in Nigeria and everything. And we can, through that, Nigeria can supply. Nigeria could have made themselves really better position, given also the war in Ukraine and the Russia and demand for those products, so that now we are number 3 or whatever, number 3 in terms of petroleum production or the natural resources. We can better deliver, better think. The OPEC, it has been really a ministry that has not been accountable to the people. So people would like to see a departure, a radical departure. So the current ministers, they need to roll their sleeves quickly, get on to work, and communicate to the people. The communication you hear from those ministries will be in time of fuel scarcity. They will come out and say, we have abundant reserve that can serve us 1 month. Please, these things are very silly. Nobody wants that kind of, information and situation. We want the real information. Like you said, it's the golden egg. This is where we get, unfortunately, we have not diversified our economy. And this is where our foreign exchange comes. And every day it is dwindling what we receive. And that's why the reserves, everything has been depleted, plus the Hydra-headed corruption. So the Hydra-headed corruption in that place. And it's not just what the minister can change immediately. You have to go through strategic thinking, planning, process, and studying the ministry, including there are staffs who have become institutions in those ministries, who will frustrate, I'm sure, even any minister and administrator, or get you to do their way. You find some of them, if they have to be moved, you move them. Then there can be massive transfer, bring in new people, bring in persons with capacity, with experience, young people on board, make sure it's inclusive, gender, everything. And then new people with new thinking that we have to redeem this country, that we have no other country than Nigeria. And we have to act in the best interest of Nigeria, not embezzling the public wealth. And what we've seen is also the attitude. I'm Minister of Petroleum Resources, very important ministry. I'm a Minister of Coordinating Minister, very important ministry. And then they create a gulf between them and the people they govern. They hardly get on to field to see what is happening. They sit there, then they travel abroad, they go to, all of this have to be minimized. The problem is in Nigeria, and we have enough capacity to solve this problem in Nigeria, and we can't just be taking depleting resources. I believe that the president will set serious, benchmarks for them. We want milestones, results, outcome, and focus on that. That ministry and this separation, I think, will work in the best interest of the country, so long as I believe one of the new ministers is also someone with experience in that sector, who has also been a legislator, who has performed oversight functions in respect of that. So I believe now that he's the chief executive, he will be in a better position to run the affairs in a way that it will be more productive, and then bring back our foreign exchange.
So, Joy Ezilu, Leonard Sake, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you. I will get back to you because earlier on you talked about mismatch in the portfolio assignments. I would want you to identify the mismatch and also evaluate that against Mr. President's declaration that he would run a government of competence. But that will be shortly when we come back from this break, because I also have a question for the gentleman here in the studio. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Let's quickly take a short break. When we come back, we'll start up with Honorable Sajo. All right, welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria. Quickly now, Honorable Sajo, just before we bring in Dr. Ochibu, there's a saying that the liberal is worthy of his or her, pay, and that when you put out an ox, to the grain, to eat the grain, you don't have to cover the mouth of the ox, to prevent it from eating. And I have brought this out against, the opinion out there that some people were merely politicians who were rewarded, for the role they played during the political campaign, rather than based on their competences. I don't want to believe that.
Okay. Let me tell you, that sometimes we make erroneous analysis of individuals just because they participated in the political process. It does not make a person who participated in the political process less of a technocrat if he has a technocratic background. You cannot deny, for example, Nyesom Wike being a lawyer. It does not, the fact that he contested elections and won and became governor does not remove the fact that he is a lawyer. You cannot, for example, remove from Badaru being an accountant. And an accountant, by all standards, is a professional. He's also a technocrat in his own right. So there are the thin dividing line is not as sharp as we want to make it. So some of these people have been in politics and they've also been in professions. What we are hoping for is that the system will benefit from both. They will have the critical thinking of professionals who've gone through the mill of training and retraining and becoming professionals, but they will also be able to make political considerations where it is necessary, particularly, issues that have to do with even spread of projects and programs, things that have to do with inclusion, making sure that there are youth, there are women, there are within systems. These are political decisions. That they are not purely technical decisions. As an accountant, you cannot sit down and you say, look, I'm just going to balance my books, debit and credit, when you are in the political space. You must also look at how does it affect certain segments of the society. So there are political decisions that need to be taken, and there are technical decisions that need to be taken. So we are bringing people who can have a blend of the two, so that one does not override the other. We do not become so technical that we assume we are mechanical. No, we are human beings. There are social science decisions that have to be taken because we are taking those decisions on behalf of people. We have sociological decisions to consider. We have psychological decisions to consider. We have ethical decisions to consider. We have all of these decisions to consider in addition to being technically efficient in delivery.
Yes, we just have to, quicken. Dr. Ochigbo, I mean, very logical, conclusion he's drawn based on the parameters that he has given. What are your opinions about this?
Well, I come back to what I said earlier. The professor talked about the hydra-headed monster, and we can use all kinds of adjectives to, describe the leadership question in Nigeria. And that was why I was recommending that whatever hybrid procedure as a therapeutic measure that the president can deploy to fast-track development, to fast-track growth, I think is very welcome. See, listen, we are not going to become or to continue to be the shame and the poverty capital of the world. We are not going to be the ridicule headquarters of the world community. We are tired, and we are not going to be on the embarrassment street and highways, of the global system. Of course, we are tired of being haunted and celebrated as big brother giant of Africa, but people have described us as giants with clay-footed feet. We are tired. We are not going to be that. So if it takes, it's about the person. You see, yes, you have attained a level, you have crossed the Rubicon, you have had exposure, you have had experience, you have the benefit of critical thinking. Yes, a good majority of them are going to be round pegs in round holes. Okay? I know there are a few upsets. I've seen comments about, how come Mr. Alake, who has been in the media, pleads for the president, what is he doing in solid minerals? But, I mean, the president must have his reasons. And I believe that for good reasons, he's going to perform there. So we have had things like this. So whatever it will take, the people. Who a person is in the inside, really. Yes, your qualifications and all that, they are good. And there are certain sectors you just need to put people who have direct requisite experience. But whatever is going to take, whatever that hybrid measure is going to be, see, for long we've practiced democracy devoid of dividends. Call it the DDD syndrome. But we can't have that again.
Do you think in terms of portfolio assignments or assignment, do you think we have mismatch? Because Professor Zilus, mentioned mismatch earlier on.
Well, yeah, there are mismatches, but what I've been trying to say that mismatch in itself is not inherently bad. It's not inherently a problem. You have someone whose pedigree, antecedents are not in sports. He's in the sports ministry. And like I said, he's a lover of sports. See, do what you love, and you will see unprecedented growth and development, and you will dazzle the world. So mismatch could be there, but that's what is still part of what I call the hybrid. And there are people who have come to do very serious things, not where they train. But when you go there, the challenge is even there. The creativity part of you comes out more. You see, let me give you this last example. I met a one-time DG of the National Directorate of Employment. And we got talking and reminiscing over issues and problems and so on. And I asked him the creativity question, what are you doing? And there were excuses and so on and so forth. But I asked him a question. I said, between corruption and unemployment today, which is the one that touches every home in this country? I'm sure it's unemployment. Corruption is there, but I'm not sure it touches every home like unemployment. And I asked him, I said, if I go out now and we pull 5 people, who is the chairman of EFCC? I don't want to call the name. He's a past chairman. 4 out of 5 will call his name. How come people don't know your name? Say, well, I said, no. Answer. How come? So the challenge for you is to go and do all it takes. A mix of ideas, a mix of creativity issues, narratives, task people, and come. You see, we are not discussing unemployment
Okay,
here, so we are not going to do
we just have to bring in Zilo.
These are issues. Thank you.
Let's quickly go back to, as the program begins to wind down, Professor Joy, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. You've listened to the question clear to the guest, the reward system in Nigeria, politicians being rewarded with ministerial lists. But one question I would like to ask you is, Nigerians are talented. And we've seen the president bringing people from outside the country to be part of the ministers here in Nigeria. And one worrying aspect is, will they be able to implement what they've learned in societies that function properly without the bottlenecks in Nigeria?
I think it's an important concern that you have raised, because sometimes they see how things are done well and things function, and they come back here, not just the coloration, but the local situation and environmental determinants tend to, just push them to the other side. And people will say, oh, but I expected this so much from this person, given their international experience. And then they will tell you about realities. We don't want that. There are very good ones that are there that have come abroad, like the coordinating minister of health, Ali Pate. We believe that he will deploy immediately his experience in that ministry. But then there is addition of social welfare also, which also people will have to unpack to know exactly what it contains. Also on the issue, there are ones that you can look at and say, oh, it's a mismatch. Maybe who is in the aviation and aerospace. But I don't think that some of them will hamper or hinder progress in those sectors if the occupant, the personality, is focused on accomplishing, learning the ropes quickly, because you have the basic education, and accomplishing. There are ones that you look and say, oh, what is the lawyer doing in aviation? But of course, apart from we have aviation laws, or what is the politician lawyer doing there? But I think if you look at people who have, like me, that have traveled the world, if you put me in that sector, I already know what to change. And I don't need to be a pilot, or I know already, because I've gone to over 130 countries in the world. I've seen airports, and I know what I desire for Nigeria. And I know exactly what I would want to put in place if I'm in that position. So that's just to say that some will still be effective if they have the humility to learn. And depending on what is their focus or purpose, is it to acquire more wealth, or is it to serve Nigeria and to render service and to deliver good governance, efficient, not just looking for where can we create money, set up this park, set up this. You look at those. If there are ones that you think they are not working, you immediately act. I think it's very, very essential that we really come back to having a responsive government that will find solution to the numerous problems of Nigeria. I had my colleague, speaker in the studio there, talk about corruption, that unemployment is in every family. But I want to say clearly that corruption is a cause and a consequence of that unemployment and underemployment we see. It impacts our development. That is why we have huge population of youth unemployed, underemployed, and trying to leave the country. Because if we deal with that, we will have enough resources to engage this youth. I want to tell people that we can employ 3,000 computer experts to even just secure Abuja, in security of Abuja. And I've shared this even over 10 years ago. I was the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking. And I said, go and see Dubai, how the city is completely secured. And I saw a stimulation team more than twice football, the Stadium of Nigeria. And you see everyone manning a computer. And that is securing a street, the whole market, and they can draw you near, they can draw any car near. And we have youth who are not employed. And you see people not creatively using them. We have few ministers definitely that will hit the ground running, and they don't need to be so much educated because they don't want to work. People like Wike, for example, Umahi, like I said, the mama. And I'm so happy that even in the education sector, for the first time that we're having a minister of education in a long time, so to speak. Tahir Mahans, SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, because he is someone with that track record and knows exactly, and a reformer, knows he will get to work immediately. In the past, people have stayed there, it's not their passion, it's not their... So one of the problems about mismatch is that you can put someone where ordinarily the person wouldn't want to go, but they go there because they are committed, because they are passionate, because they know they can learn quickly. They will even perform effectively. But you look at ones who will continue to grudge and grumble that they were put in a ministry where they don't like, or they think there is not so much money, and then they begin to look at, so they don't even want to learn even the technical component. They don't even want to bring in the expert that can even help them, deliver on their mandate. So, but the key thing is that the buck will stop with Mr. President. He has to do the final, oversight, and I believe...
Yeah. Professor Joy Ezilo, thank you. I would like to just briefly, ask you, just before we come back here to round up the conversation, and briefly too, if you may, in the past, sector rivalry also impacted on the outcome and deliverables that the ministers, were able to deliver. Now that we've seen, demarcation of ministries, remodeling of ministries, and all that, do you think that will address the issue of ministerial rivalry? Prof.
Because if you look at having now marine and blue economy, and then they can deal with then you look at the issue of gas, petroleum. There are also new areas that they had add-ons like innovation, but then separation of youth and sports, very, very crucial. An important point has been made by the guest on your studio, Ahmed, about that. So those ones it will cut, but then the minister and minister of state, and the impression that minister of state is a junior minister, and that's impression that we have to just dispense. Here we can see also some highly qualified people becoming minister of state, including past governors. So I think it's important that, and we've had people also complain that minister of state is unconstitutional because all the states have equal status. Yes, And so with that, you see competition. But if they have really clearly defined targets, deliverables, specified mandates and functions, and everyone keeps to that, and then they cooperate, then they coordinate well, then there wouldn't be a problem. But if they just go on to the Minister of State and Minister doesn't see eye to eye, it affects everything. It will, from our foreign affairs to internal affairs, to every sector. But I don't think with a handsome president that can be allowed to linger. But this restructuring will help to a large extent in the management of those conflicts. But in the end, Doctor, it depends on individual, the personality, the secrets of individuals involved. There are individuals, wherever they get, it's about behavior. Wherever you find them, they will try to be, to say they are the ones. So, and with that, they can hardly work with any or look down on their contemporary or including their fellow ministers. And I hope that wouldn't happen with some of the people also we have seen and know their background very well. I don't expect that to happen in some ministries. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Abel, let me bring you in and let's have your closing, comment. This program, as we are having this discussion, is setting agenda already for the ministers before they are sworn in on Monday and go for the retreat. Where would you see us with this new crop of ministers in the first 1 year?
Thank you. We must build hope. I see us within a year, charting a new paradigm pathway. I see us not having business as usual. But however, let me say this, that we are talking ministers. It's a holistic framework. The ministers alone cannot do that. The ministers are going to be in ministries where civil servants, public servants are all going to have their hands on the deck. And let me tell you, look at all the past development plans of this nation. If you find out why they didn't work, you are going to see the issue about an inefficient bureaucracy and public service or civil service. So they have their part to contribute. Secondly, the ministers, who is a minister? I don't want to make semantics about who a minister, but there's something about a ministry, about administration. You have to minimize yourself so that you maximize your sector. But then, come to look at it, we are talking about individuals. We're also talking about a team. There must be teamwork. And we are talking about a system.
Dr.
And
Chibo,
finally,
yes.
Finally, I had a boss, financial controller, an expatriate. The day we were sending him off to leave the country, he told us something, and I always remember. He said, I met the finances of this company in a bad shape. I may not have improved it, but I'm not leaving it any worse.
Dr. Chibo, thank you very much. But you said something, keyword, teamwork. Honorable Sajo, Professor Isidore talked about the conduct of the ministers, a very critical aspect in helping, the ministers to perform effectively. What are your closing thoughts about
it? I think I started from there, that the first thing the ministers must do is to win back the public. We need to work with the public because, let us be honest, Nigerians are hungry, they are angry, but they are hopeful. And because they are hopeful, we can build on that hope to extinguish the hunger and the anger. And my brother here mentioned something about we being seen in very negative lights internationally, poverty capital of the world and all that. We need to change that. So what the ministers should do, first and foremost, is to evaluate their mandate, their portfolios, evaluate the work, the quantum of work required in each of their ministries, and look for the low-hanging fruits. Bring them down immediately so people can see results. And then in their conduct, I keep saying, we're talking about technocrats, but we must also talk about ethical behavior. They must be ethical, they must work in a manner as to win the confidence of Nigerians. We need that, absolutely.
You wanted to say something before you cut off.
Yes.
Okay.
All I wanted to say was that at the end of the day, You know, ministers will always come under hoopla, under celebration, congratulations. And each time ministers leave, I hear sacked. This time around, we don't want to hear a minister like my boss said. I met this place in a bad shape. I may not have improved it, but I'm not leaving it any worse. Please improve it. Don't even leave it where you met it.
We don't want to hear that word sacked.
Yes.
Dr. Abel Daniel Ochibo, I'm sorry I had to cut off that such a wonderful quotation and message. But thank you, Jume, for bringing him back. Dr. Abel Daniel Ochibo, former Deputy Clerk, House of Representatives and CEO, Creativity Management Consult, Abuja. Thank you very much. It was good to have you on our show. And we have Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State and Public Affairs Analyst, always in point, of course, with his contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Professor Joy Ngozi Zilo, Leonard Silk, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Emeritus Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Nigeria in Nsukka. It's always a pleasure to have you, ma'am, with us, and we look forward to having you.
To ask her what she thinks about the percentage of women in the cabinet.
All right, okay, Jumai.
Well, so now gentlemen, go to us. What's next for the latest in the world of sports?
Michael Olise has signed a new 4-year deal at Crystal Palace, according to Chairman Steve Parish. Chelsea had been heavily linked with the move for the winger in a deal that could have cost them £35 million. However, such a transfer has now been thrown in doubt as Olise has opted to extend his stay at Selhurst Park. Talking to social media, Parish announced that Palace are set to hold on to one of their brightest talent for longer. Olise, who is currently nursing a hamstring injury, scored 2 goals and provided 11 assists for Palace last season after signing from Ridden in 2021. Meanwhile, Russian and Belarusian track and field athletes are unlikely to be able to compete at the 2024 Olympics, says World Athletics President Lord Coe. World Athletics has banned competitors from the 2 countries from its events, including a neutral flag because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The International Olympics Committee (IOC) has said athletes should be able to compete as neutrals. The IOC has not made a final call for the Olympics and can only give broad recommendations, meaning individual sports can still choose to enforce bans. The IOC has been criticized for saying it is exploring a pathway for Russian and Belarusians to compete, with the United Kingdom among more than 30 countries to pledge support for a ban.
Our position is very clear. The Council has made that position clear. The new Council, I'm not going to speak for them in advance, but I would be very surprised if there was any shift in that position. And I think that we have certainty, and we've done it for the reasons of integrity of competition.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us on Monday for another edition. I am Jumma Yusuf, and for Claire, who loves Friday.
All right, of course, but just to add that this is a discussion that will be in the public domain for days and weeks to come, and of course you can count on NTA to give you a platform to catch up on more information. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak, and my weekend starts right now.